The stars stretched endlessly across the black sky, glittering like scattered diamonds. From her command balcony, Empress Lysera of the Velari Empire looked down at the vast expanse of her homeworld, once thriving with life and civilization. Now it seemed smaller, fragile, and vulnerable, like a crystal vase teetering on the edge of a table. War had come swiftly, unexpectedly, and without mercy. Messages from her generals had become frantic, fragmented, reports of enemy fleets moving faster than expected, of cities falling one by one, of her people scattering into the void. Lysera had always believed in the strength of her empire, in the loyalty of her subjects, and in the unshakable bond she shared with her twin daughters, Leora and Selene. Now, in the shadow of an unstoppable threat, those beliefs were tested like never before. She had been at the palace when the first warning arrived. Explosions had torn through the outskirts, their vibrations shaking the palace walls and echoing in her chest like distant thunder. Servants and guards had rushed to secure her daughters, moving them into a hidden chamber designed for emergencies. But Lysera's heart had been heavy with dread. She had seen the enemy's ships approaching, their silhouettes cutting through the stars like sharp blades. The Velari defense fleet was strong, yes, but no fleet, no matter how skilled, could defend against this storm. The Empress had to make a decision, stay and fight to the last, or escape and live to see her children again. By the time she made her choice, the palace was already in chaos. Beams of light and energy arced across the sky, and the hum of alien machinery was replaced by a deafening roar. Her guards fought bravely, their synchronized movements almost artistic, but against sheer numbers, artistry was meaningless. Lysera grabbed her daughter's hands, feeling their small fingers clutch hers tightly, the warmth and trust between them anchoring her heart amidst the panic. She whispered promises she hoped to keep, words of safety, of love, of return. Then came the moment that shattered her soul. A massive explosion rocked the palace core, sending walls crumbling and debris flying. Lysera was thrown to the floor, her ears ringing, her vision blurred. She reached out for the twins, but there was nothing. The chamber that had protected them moments ago was now a heap of twisted metal and smoke. She screamed their names, but only echoes returned, harsh and cold. Through tears, she saw figures retreating into the void, shadows among shadows, taking her daughters away. Time became strange after that. Hours or days, she could not tell. She moved like a ghost through the ruined halls, touching the remnants of her life. Portraits of her ancestors, tapestries of victories and peace, and the very throne she had once sat upon, all seemed meaningless now. Her empire had fallen, but nothing compared to the pain of believing her children were gone. She sat by a broken window, staring at the distant stars, whispering their names into the void. The universe, vast and indifferent, gave no answer. Meanwhile, far from the devastation, a human warrior named Kale drifted through the debris of a battlefield no one had noticed. Humans were few in this part of the galaxy, often underestimated, considered fragile and temporary by the great empires. Kale, however, had always believed in the opposite. Where others saw danger, he saw opportunity. Where others feared, he planned. He had trained for situations that no human should have to face, relying not on raw strength but on intellect, timing, and courage. His ship had intercepted fragments of Velari distress signals, garbled and incomplete, but they had been enough to spark curiosity, and curiosity for Kale was as sharp as any blade. The battlefield was silent now, the violence passed, leaving a strange stillness that seemed almost unnatural. Kale floated among the wreckage, scanning for life signs. Then a faint pulse caught his attention. It was irregular but present. He traced it to a hidden chamber half buried under the remnants of the palace. Inside, to his astonishment, were two small pods glowing softly. The life readings were faint but stable. His heart skipped. They were not adults, not soldiers, but children, and from the signs he saw, they were not just human, they were something else. Alien. Kale quickly opened the pods, careful not to trigger any latent defenses. Inside, the twins stirred, their large, luminous eyes blinking at him in confusion. Leora, the elder by minutes, looked around with sharp curiosity, while Selene, softer and smaller, instinctively reached out for comfort. Kale's first instinct was to reassure them, to smile even when fear gnawed at his chest. He spoke in the universal tones of human kindness, calm and simple. "It's okay. You're safe now. I'm here to help." Leora clutched her sister's hand, their small fingers entwining, and slowly, cautiously, they allowed Kale to guide them out of the pods. It was a delicate process, every movement measured, every gesture intended to build trust. Once outside the chamber, Kale assessed the landscape. The ruins were dangerous, with unstable structures, energy leaks, and pockets of residual hazards. He carried each child when necessary, sometimes letting them walk when the terrain allowed. Along the way, he learned a little from the twins, not words, but gestures, expressions, and shared understanding. Leora pointed at an energy rift, Selene shivered at a shadow moving unexpectedly, and Kale adjusted instantly. Humans had a reputation for unpredictability, but here it worked in his favor. As they traveled, Kale began to sense that the twins were not ordinary children. Their presence had a subtle effect on the environment. Energy readings shifted near them, minor machinery responded to their touch. Kale observed, fascinated but cautious. He realized that the twins might carry a dormant form of Velari power, a legacy of their lineage, something that could alter the course of events far beyond this ruined palace. This knowledge made him even more determined to keep them safe, not just from enemies, but from ignorance or exploitation. The journey was long and exhausting. Kale relied on old survival skills, finding hidden paths, using abandoned structures for shelter, and avoiding the patrols of enemy forces still scouring the area. The twins, despite their youth, displayed resilience and adaptability. Leora would mimic his actions, climbing carefully, testing airflows, learning quickly. Selene, gentle and observant, seemed to understand danger instinctively, refusing to step into areas Kale hadn't scanned. Together, they formed a small, fragile unit that depended on trust, courage, and quick thinking. Nights were the hardest. Kale kept them close, sharing what little warmth he could provide. He told them stories of humans and Velari alike, of distant stars and the concept of hope, trying to implant a sense of continuity despite the chaos surrounding them. The twins listened quietly, absorbing not just the words but the tone, the intent, the promise that they were not alone. For Kale, these moments were humbling. He had always thought of humans as capable of great feats, but here, in the quiet companionship of two frightened children, he felt the deeper strength of humanity, empathy, courage, and unwavering commitment. One evening, as they rested beneath the fractured hull of a floating transport ship, the twins showed a sign that shook Kale to his core. Leora touched the air and faint lights flickered, responding to her motion. Selene, laughing softly, seemed to pull warmth from the cold surroundings, creating a small bubble of comfort that held them all. Kale realized that these abilities were not just tricks, they were real and they were a legacy. They were the daughters of an Empress, true heirs to power, and somehow, inexplicably, their survival was now intertwined with a human's ingenuity and determination. Kale looked up at the stars, imagining Empress Lysera somewhere out there, searching for her children with a heart full of grief. He felt a quiet resolve settle within him. Whatever it took, he would get these children back to her. He would navigate the galaxies, face whatever dangers came, and ensure that the hope of an entire people would not vanish. For now, though, they rested. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, they were alive, together, and safe. An extraordinary beginning in a universe that had been anything but forgiving. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of the ruined palace and the distant stars, the Empress's mind reached out in despair, a small glimmer of intuition telling her that her daughters might yet live. A faint pulse, carried across the void, hinted that hope was not gone, that the human warrior who moved unseen among the wreckage might be more than just a stranger. He might be the key to restoring what had been lost, the bridge between worlds, and the unexpected hero of a story that had only just begun. The stars had changed since Kale first found the twins. What once seemed distant and cold now felt alive, filled with paths and possibilities. Every glimmer of light reminded him that they had survived, that hope still moved quietly across the galaxy. The twins had grown accustomed to his presence, following without hesitation, learning to trust the rhythm of his steps and the careful way he navigated dangers. Kale found himself studying them more closely, noticing small details, the curve of their smiles, the way their eyes sparkled when they discovered something new, and the quiet determination that showed even in their smallest gestures. Traveling across a fractured landscape of ruined cities and abandoned spaceports, Kale began to see that this journey was not just about survival. It was about teaching the twins how to adapt, how to think, and how to move through a universe that did not wait for anyone. Leora, more curious and daring, often explored first, testing pathways and signaling when something was safe. Selene, quieter and more reflective, observed and calculated, her gaze absorbing the smallest details. The angle of a floating beam, the hum of residual energy in the air, the faint traces of movement left by unseen creatures. Together, they formed a remarkable team, children whose instincts were sharpened by necessity, guided by a human whose experience was honed through years of careful practice. Kale knew the galaxy was not empty. Even in areas abandoned by major civilizations, the echoes of life remained. Machines still hummed, minor satellites orbited forgotten planets, and some species had made homes in the ruins. They needed to remain vigilant, but Kale also knew that the twins needed to learn more than just survival. He began teaching them simple skills: how to read the patterns of stars for navigation, how to recognize safe zones from dangerous ones, and how to interpret subtle energy fluctuations that might indicate movement nearby. At first, the twins mimicked him clumsily, but soon they began to anticipate his actions, often moving before he had even thought to suggest a course. One afternoon, as they rested in the shadow of a collapsed transport station, Kale noticed something unusual. Leora's hand hovered over a panel of broken machinery, and the lights flickered in response to her touch. Kale froze, realizing that her ability to interact with the environment was not just instinct, it was something more. He watched as Selene followed suit, her smaller hands coaxing warmth from the cold, lifeless metal, as if she could breathe life into the inanimate. Kale marveled not with fear but with awe. These were no ordinary children. They were the heirs of a civilization, and their potential was extraordinary, but potential alone would not protect them. Kale knew they had to reach safe territory quickly. Rumors of neutral planets, of settlements untouched by the war, had reached him through old human networks and intercepted communications. He aimed for one such place, a remote moon called Talves, where no major empire maintained a presence. It was not much, just a small settlement of traders and wanderers, but it offered safety and resources. As they traveled, Kale relied on his ship's cloaking technology, avoiding sensors and patrols. The twins watched with fascination as the stars shifted outside the viewports, occasionally asking questions about distant constellations or the strange phenomena that dotted the void. Kale answered simply, explaining without overwhelming, nurturing their curiosity while maintaining a sense of calm. During the journey, Kale found himself reflecting on humanity's role in the galaxy. Humans were not the strongest species, nor the most advanced. They were often overlooked, underestimated, even dismissed as fragile. Yet here he was, alone in enemy territory, guiding two children across a dangerous landscape, solving problems others would have found impossible. He felt a quiet pride, a deep satisfaction that came from knowing humans could adapt, innovate, and protect when circumstances demanded it. The twins' trust amplified this feeling, and for the first time in many cycles, Kale allowed himself to feel something like hope. When they finally reached Talves, the settlement looked modest but welcoming. Small domes clustered together, linked by walkways and transport tubes. People of various species moved about, trading goods, repairing vessels, and tending to gardens that flourished even under the dim light of the twin moons. Kale led the twins through the bustling streets carefully, avoiding drawing unnecessary attention. The settlement welcomed travelers but was wary of unknown faces. Kale introduced the twins slowly, emphasizing their safety and the need for discretion. Leora and Selene, curious and cautious, adapted quickly, learning to navigate social interactions even at their young age. It was in Talves that Kale's ingenuity shone. The settlement lacked advanced medical or technological facilities, yet he managed to create protective devices using scrap materials and old energy cells. Simple shields to hide the twins, life signatures, small containers to carry essentials, and improvised communicators to alert him to danger. He involved the twins in the process, showing them how to adapt tools, how to observe patterns, and how to anticipate potential risks. The children absorbed these lessons eagerly, learning more from observation than from instruction. By the end of the first week, they were no longer just survivors, they were active participants in their own protection. During one quiet evening, Kale and the twins watched Talves, twin moons, rise over the horizon. The settlement was calm, but Kale knew this peace was temporary. He spoke softly, more to himself than to the twins, about the importance of planning ahead, about the necessity of thinking beyond the moment. Leora rested her head against his shoulder, sensing the weight in his tone, while Selene's fingers traced the patterns of light on the floor, her mind clearly working through unseen calculations. Kale realized that these children, though young, were already shaping their environment simply by being present. He felt a sense of responsibility heavier than any burden he had carried before. The twins' abilities became more apparent over time. Leora could sense structural weaknesses in buildings, noticing cracks or vibrations that even Kale sometimes missed. Selene, with her subtle focus, could detect minor energy flows, helping them identify safe areas or locate hidden resources. Kale encouraged them gently, never pushing too far, allowing them to discover their strengths naturally. It was a delicate balance, guiding without controlling, protecting without limiting. By teaching them to observe and adapt, he ensured that the twins could one day act independently, navigating a galaxy still full of uncertainty. One day, a small crisis tested their coordination. A sudden energy surge passed through part of the settlement, triggering alarms and sending minor machinery into unexpected motion. The twins reacted instinctively. Leora moved first, guiding residents away from the affected area, while Selene adjusted small devices to stabilize power flows. Kale watched in astonishment as the children's teamwork turned a potential disaster into a manageable situation. For him, it was a confirmation. These were not just children, not just heirs of an alien empire. They were capable, intelligent, and courageous in ways few adults could match. Kale also noticed changes in the twins' personalities. The trauma they had endured had left marks, but it had also instilled resilience. Leora became more decisive, often taking the lead in small challenges, while Selene's thoughtful approach balanced her sister's boldness. Together, they complemented each other perfectly, creating a synergy that reminded Kale of why he had chosen this mission in the first place. Humanity had many strengths, but the ability to inspire and nurture others to create connections and trust was perhaps the most powerful. He felt it here, in the quiet moments and in the intense ones, guiding these young lives through uncertainty. Kale also began sending discreet messages through old human networks, seeking information about the Empress. He did not yet know if she was alive or searching, but the twins' safety meant that every effort mattered. Even without direct contact, he sensed her presence somewhere in the galaxy, a faint pulse of determination that mirrored his own. The thought of reuniting mother and children drove him onward, fueling the long days and restless nights. As weeks passed, Talves became more than just a temporary refuge. The twins began exploring under Kale's supervision, learning about the settlement, interacting with its inhabitants, and practicing their abilities in controlled ways. Leora's curiosity led her to small engineering projects, while Selene's subtle energy skills helped stabilize minor machinery. Kale provided guidance, always emphasizing observation, caution, and creativity. The children grew confident, capable, and independent, yet still attentive to Kale's presence, a delicate balance of trust and autonomy. One night, while watching the stars from a quiet hill outside the settlement, Kale spoke to the twins about the galaxy beyond Talves. He told them about distant planets, strange creatures, and civilizations far older than their own. He explained the importance of knowledge, creativity, and courage, framing them not as abstract concepts but as tools for survival and leadership. The twins listened attentively, absorbing not just the words but the tone, the intent, and the sense of purpose behind them. Kale realized that these moments were shaping the children more than any instruction manual ever could. As the twin moons reflected on the horizon, Kale felt a quiet determination settle within him. The journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and sometimes indifferent, but he now had companions who could think, adapt, and act in ways that even he could not. Together, they would face the challenges ahead, navigating not just physical obstacles but the uncertainties of fate, trust, and destiny. And somewhere beyond Talves, the faintest trace of an Empress's intuition whispered across the stars. Somewhere, the hope of reunion glimmered quietly, waiting for the moment when courage, ingenuity, and love would intersect. Kale knew that moment would come. Until then, they would continue their journey, learning, growing, and moving ever forward, carrying the fragile but unbreakable spark of hope through a galaxy that had already tested them beyond measure. The quiet of Talves had become a rhythm for Kale and the twins, a temporary peace in the middle of chaos. But peace, he knew, was never permanent in a galaxy as wide and unpredictable as theirs. Kale had spent hours mapping possible routes to safer regions, using old star charts, intercepted signals, and instinct born from years of navigating dangerous territories. He had learned that danger did not always roar. Sometimes it crept in silently, in shadows, or in the assumptions of others. The twins were learning this too, but Kale wanted them to understand something more important. courage and cleverness often mattered more than strength. One morning, as Talvis, twin suns rose, the settlement stirred with unusual activity. A group of travelers, carrying heavy containers and moving with caution, had arrived. Kale observed them from a distance, noticing the way they communicated in subtle gestures and careful whispers. It was clear they were not ordinary traders. Their purpose seemed deliberate, calculated. He signaled to the twins to stay quiet and close. Leora, alert and sharp-eyed, instinctively read the traveler's posture, while Selene studied the faint energy traces in the air. Together, they formed a small unit that could sense danger before it became obvious. Kale decided to approach carefully. The travelers, despite their outward composure, reacted to his presence with surprise. Through brief gestures and universal symbols, Kale learned they were searching for someone important to a hidden alliance in the outer systems. He realized immediately that the twins' presence could be relevant to them. If the wrong people discovered their identities, their safety could be compromised. Kale weighed his options, deciding that the best approach was transparency, controlled disclosure, and observation. The twins watched silently as he explained, keeping his voice calm, reassuring, and confident. The visitors stayed only a short while, leaving cryptic messages and supplies before moving on. Kale interpreted this as a reminder that the universe was watching. No one could travel entirely unnoticed, and alliances were fragile and often hidden. For the twins, it became a lesson in awareness, in reading subtle signals, and in understanding that not all beings had immediate intentions that were clear or trustworthy. Kale felt a quiet satisfaction as he saw their minds working, observing, calculating, and absorbing lessons that would serve them in the future. Days later, Kale took the twins beyond the settlement to a nearby cavern network. These caverns were known for their strange, natural energy flows and for being a safe haven for travelers avoiding patrols. As they entered, the twins' abilities became more apparent. Leora instinctively sensed weak spots in the rock formations, guiding them through safer paths, while Selene seemed to harmonize with the ambient energy, helping stabilize minor tremors. Kale realized that these skills could be crucial for survival, not just in emergencies but in navigating and understanding the universe. Within the caverns, Kale also began teaching the twins more advanced problem-solving techniques. He introduced puzzles, small engineering challenges, and observational exercises. Leora was eager, competitive, and quick to act, while Selene preferred to watch and think, noticing patterns and predicting outcomes. Kale encouraged both approaches, emphasizing that courage and intellect were not opposites but complementary forces. The twins' excitement was contagious, filling the cavern with energy and laughter that reminded Kale of what he was protecting, not just lives, but potential, intelligence, and the spark of future leaders. While in the caverns, Kale also reflected on humanity's role in the galaxy. Humans were often underestimated by other civilizations, considered too fragile to endure the trials of interstellar life. But Kale saw something others missed. Humans were creative, adaptable, and persistent. They could observe, improvise, and find solutions where others only saw obstacles. As he watched the twins work with their abilities, he realized that the future could be shaped not just by strength, but by cleverness, collaboration, and resilience. In them, he saw a reflection of what humanity could achieve when courage and wisdom were combined. One day, as they explored a particularly deep cavern, Kale noticed faint tracks of movement, small, careful traces that suggested someone had passed through recently. The twins, alert and cautious, immediately sensed the change. Leora pointed out subtle marks in the rock, while Selene adjusted to the energy pattern, detecting what Kale could not see with his eyes alone. They followed the tracks, not out of recklessness, but out of curiosity and the desire to understand their surroundings. Kale observed them with a mixture of pride and caution, recognizing that their instincts and abilities were growing sharper each day. The tracks led to a hidden chamber deep within the caverns, filled with strange artifacts and ancient tools left by travelers long gone. Kale encouraged the twins to explore, guiding them in careful observation. Leora's eyes sparkled as she examined a complex device that seemed to respond to touch, while Selene analyzed the energy patterns flowing through the artifacts. Kale explained that knowledge could be found everywhere, not just in books or instructions, but in observation, experimentation, and understanding. The twins listened attentively, absorbing lessons that would shape their ability to act independently in the future. Kale also began sharing stories with the twins, not just about human ingenuity, but about collaboration and trust. He told them of humans forming alliances with unexpected allies, solving problems through conversation and cleverness rather than force. The twins were fascinated, asking questions and thinking through the scenarios themselves. Kale realized that these lessons were crucial. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, and their survival would depend not only on innate abilities, but on understanding relationships, motives, and the power of clever negotiation. As they spent more time in the caverns, Kale noticed subtle improvements in the twins' coordination. Leora would take initiative, moving first, testing pathways and making small adjustments, while Selene would observe and correct, creating a harmony of action and thought. Kale encouraged this balance, knowing that the twins' complementary skills would be essential in the challenges ahead. He marveled at their resilience, their courage, and their growing understanding of the universe. In many ways, they were teaching him as much as he was teaching them. One afternoon, Kale received a message through a discreet communicator, a coded signal from an old human contact in a distant system. The signal suggested that remnants of the Velarri Empire were still active, that there were pockets of survivors seeking leadership, and that the Empress, if alive, might still be searching for her daughters. Kale's heart raced. The journey was no longer just about survival. It was about connection, reunion, and fulfilling a promise. He shared the news with the twins, explaining in simple, calm words what it might mean. Leora's eyes widened with curiosity and excitement, while Selene's gaze grew focused and determined. They understood, in their own way, the significance of the message. Kale began planning their next steps carefully. They could not move recklessly, as the paths were still dangerous and the universe filled with unknown challenges. He explained to the twins the importance of preparation, observation, and patience. Leora nodded eagerly, while Selene's subtle energy sensing allowed Kale to anticipate obstacles before encountering them. Together, they mapped routes, calculated risks, and planned contingencies. The twins' involvement was not just symbolic, it was practical, giving them experience in decision-making and responsibility. During one of their practice exercises, the twins demonstrated a remarkable ability to combine their talents. Leora detected a minor structural instability in a simulated environment, while Selene stabilized energy flows to prevent collapse. Kale watched, impressed, as their coordination turned a potential hazard into a controlled experiment. He realized that their training had moved beyond survival. They were now capable of influencing outcomes, shaping environments, and solving complex problems as a team. Evenings in the cavern were moments of reflection. Kale often sat with the twins, sharing quiet stories of distant stars, civilizations, and the importance of hope. He explained that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. He told them that intelligence was most valuable when combined with compassion and creativity. The twins listened, absorbing the lessons and adding their own observations. Leora often asked questions about how humans solved problems creatively, while Selene pondered the patterns and relationships in the stories. The twins' growth did not go unnoticed. Other inhabitants of Talves, who initially watched the small group with curiosity and skepticism, began to respect Kale's guidance and the children's abilities. Simple demonstrations of clever solutions, careful observation, and thoughtful problem-solving impressed many. Kale realized that influence came not from authority or power, but from competence, creativity, and trustworthiness. This lesson reinforced the human philosophy he had always carried. Ingenuity and collaboration could overcome challenges where raw strength alone could not. As the days passed, Kale noticed subtle changes in the twins' personalities. Leora became more confident, taking initiative in planning routes and problem-solving exercises. Selene became more perceptive, noticing details others might overlook and anticipating outcomes with surprising accuracy. Kale encouraged both approaches, explaining that the universe required a balance of courage and thought, action and reflection. The twins absorbed these lessons not as instruction, but as practical tools for life. One evening, under the glow of Talves' twin moons, Kale looked at the twins and felt a deep sense of purpose. They were more than just survivors, they were potential leaders, capable of shaping the future of their people. Their journey had transformed them from frightened children into resourceful, intelligent, and courageous individuals. Kale knew the road ahead would be long and uncertain, but he also knew that together, they could face whatever the universe had in store. And somewhere across the galaxy, faint signals suggested the Empress was still alive, still searching. Hope, fragile but persistent, stretched across the void. Kale felt its pulse like a quiet promise. He knew that the reunion, when it came, would be a moment of triumph not only for the Velari but for humanity as well. Until then, the journey continued, each step, each lesson, each moment of growth preparing them for the challenges yet to come. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and full of mysteries, but Kale, Leora, and Selene were ready to face it together, their courage and ingenuity guiding the way. The air on Talves felt different that morning. The twin suns rose slowly, casting long golden shadows across the settlement. Kale sensed a change, not a threat yet, but a subtle shift, like a warning carried on the wind. He had grown used to reading the galaxy, feeling patterns in signals, energy flows, and even in the movements of creatures. Today, his instincts told him that the twins' presence, however hidden, was starting to attract attention. He glanced at Leora and Selene, who were playing near a quiet canal fed by warm mineral springs. Their laughter floated through the air, innocent and carefree, but Kale's mind was already calculating the challenges that might come. He decided it was time to teach them another kind of lesson, one that went beyond cleverness or survival skills. "The universe," he said as he guided them to a quiet overlook above the settlement, "is full of beings who may want the same things you want, or different things, or both. Sometimes you can't control what others want, but you can control how you respond." Leora tilted her head, absorbing the words, while Selene's fingers brushed the edge of a small stone, feeling its texture as if seeking understanding through touch. Kale continued, emphasizing calm observation, trust, and clever action. These lessons were subtle but crucial. The first signs of approaching attention came as faint signals detected by one of Kale's improvised scanners. A small group of travelers, no, scouts, was moving carefully toward Talves. Kale did not panic. He had prepared the twins for situations like this. He explained the importance of staying calm, observing patterns, and anticipating potential moves without rushing. The twins, attentive and focused, followed his instructions, blending into the shadows of the canyon-like structures that made up the settlement. Their actions were careful, measured, and increasingly independent. Kale felt pride swell in his chest. They were learning the balance between curiosity, caution, and courage. As the scouts arrived, it became clear that they were skilled, cautious, and perhaps not fully hostile. Kale engaged them subtly, using signs and universal gestures to indicate that he meant no harm. Leora and Selene watched closely, learning about negotiation, reading intentions, and observing body language without words. The scouts, after a short interaction, moved on, leaving behind minor supplies and messages that suggested they were part of a larger network monitoring movement across the outer systems. Kale interpreted this as an early lesson in diplomacy. Strength alone would never ensure safety. Understanding, cleverness, and careful communication were equally important. The twins' abilities began to reveal themselves more fully as they spent time in Talves. Leora had a natural sense of direction and awareness, often noticing details in the environment that Kale might have missed. She could sense vibrations, shifts in air pressure, and even subtle changes in energy patterns. Selene, in contrast, had a quiet influence on surrounding energy flows. Machines, devices, and even environmental energy seemed to respond subtly to her presence. Kale encouraged them to experiment safely, teaching them that their gifts were not just tools for survival, but instruments of understanding and problem-solving. One day, Kale decided to test the twins' ability to coordinate under challenge. He set up a simulated scenario using old energy conduits, minor structural obstacles, and observation points. The task was simple: navigate from one side of the cavern to another without triggering certain energy markers. Leora moved first, her confidence and decisiveness guiding her, while Selene observed the flow of energy and made subtle adjustments to stabilize the path. Kale watched, impressed, as the twins worked seamlessly together, demonstrating ingenuity, foresight, and trust. This exercise was more than training. It was a lesson in teamwork, creative problem-solving, and calm judgment under pressure. Meanwhile, Kale began sending discreet messages to human contacts and remaining Velari loyalists. The news of the twins, survival, and abilities had to be shared carefully. He wanted allies, not enemies, and he wanted information, not exposure. The twins observed these communications, learning about strategy, discretion, and the importance of timing and interactions that could shape the future. Kale often reminded them that intelligence and creativity were most effective when combined with patience and careful planning. The twins absorbed these lessons with curiosity, their young minds stretching to understand patterns and consequences that extended far beyond Talves. Several weeks passed, and the twins' confidence grew. Leora began experimenting with minor engineering projects, using her awareness of structure and pattern to solve problems creatively. Selene applied her energy sensitivity to stabilize machinery, enhance small devices, and anticipate minor fluctuations in the environment. Kale guided them, offering advice but allowing them to discover solutions independently. Each success, each clever adjustment, reinforced their confidence, their ability to act decisively, and their growing sense of agency. Kale also recognized that the twins needed to learn how to engage with others, not just navigate environments. He introduced them gradually to select members of Talves, teaching the importance of observation, listening, and subtle communication. Leora's curiosity and initiative made her comfortable with conversation, while Selene's thoughtfulness encouraged patience and attentive engagement. Kale emphasized that influence came from understanding, creativity, and trustworthiness, rather than authority or intimidation. The twins practiced subtly, learning the power of calm insight and quiet leadership. One afternoon, Kale noticed a faint signal arriving through an encrypted channel. It was short and fragmented, but it suggested the presence of a Velari group still loyal to the Empress, scattered across distant systems. The message hinted that the Empress herself might still be alive and searching for her daughters. Kale shared the news carefully with the twins, explaining its importance and emphasizing caution. Leora's eyes sparkled with curiosity, while Selene's quiet focus sharpened as she considered the possibilities and dangers. This revelation marked a turning point. Their journey was no longer just about survival. It had become a mission of connection, hope, and reunion. Kale began planning the next stage of their journey with great care. He emphasized preparation, observation, and flexibility, teaching the twins that no plan was perfect, but thoughtful action and creativity could overcome uncertainty. The twins participated actively, mapping routes, calculating resources, and considering potential challenges. Their training had evolved beyond simple survival. They were now capable of thinking critically, anticipating outcomes, and contributing meaningfully to strategy. Kale watched them, realizing that the twins' growth was as remarkable as it was rapid. During this period, the twins' abilities continued to manifest in subtle but powerful ways. Leora's awareness of structure allowed her to identify weak points in environments, anticipate changes, and adjust paths accordingly. Selene's energy manipulation subtly enhanced systems, provided stability, and helped maintain safety. Kale encouraged experimentation, always within safe limits, fostering creativity, curiosity, and responsibility. The twins were learning that their gifts were not merely tools, they were extensions of thought, insight, and collaboration. Kale also began discussing broader concepts with the twins. He spoke of leadership, responsibility, and the ways in which intelligence and courage could shape societies. Leora asked questions eagerly, exploring ideas about problem-solving and decision-making, while Selene considered the balance of influence and cooperation. Kale emphasized that understanding, creativity, and empathy were strengths as important as any power or skill. The twins listened, thought, and internalized these lessons, preparing them for the challenges that lay ahead. One evening, as the twin moons rose over Talves, Kale and the twins observed the stars, contemplating their place in the universe. Kale spoke softly, telling stories of human explorers, Velari history, and the unexpected ways courage and ingenuity had shaped events. Leora and Selene listened intently, their minds absorbing both fact and philosophy. Kale realized that these quiet moments were as important as any training exercise. The twins were developing not only skills, but understanding, judgment, and the ability to act wisely under uncertainty. A few days later, Kale received confirmation that scattered Velari loyalists had indeed located remnants of the Empress's communication signals. The news suggested that the Empress might be alive, searching for her daughters with relentless determination. Kale shared the information carefully, ensuring the twins understood the importance of patience, planning, and clever action. Leora's excitement was tempered by careful thinking, while Selene's focus sharpened as she considered their options. Together, they began preparing for a journey that would extend beyond Talves, beyond the familiar, into regions of the galaxy filled with unknowns, alliances, and challenges. Kale's pride in the twins grew daily. They were no longer frightened children clinging to him for safety. They had become intelligent, capable, and courageous partners in thought and action. Their skills, combined with Kale's experience, created a team capable of facing the unknown with confidence and creativity. Each day brought new lessons, new opportunities for growth, and new demonstrations of cleverness and resourcefulness. The twins' development was not just remarkable, it was extraordinary, a testament to resilience, intelligence, and the power of guidance combined with innate ability. As the days turned into weeks, Kale felt the first stirrings of hope that had been absent for so long. The twins' growth, the subtle signs of Velarri loyalty, and the distant presence of the Empress all pointed toward a future where reunion was possible. Yet he knew the path would be difficult. The galaxy was unpredictable, filled with unknown obstacles, and the twins' abilities, while extraordinary, required careful management and guidance. Kale resolved to continue their preparation, teaching them not only survival skills but wisdom, creativity, and the courage to act decisively when the moment came. And somewhere far across the stars, the faint pulse of the Empress reached into the void, a quiet signal of determination and hope. She had not yet found her daughters, but she could feel that they were alive, that a human warrior had become their guardian, and that the spark of reunion was growing stronger with every passing moment. Kale sensed it too, in the energy of the twins, in their growing abilities, and in the subtle threads that connected him to something greater than himself. The universe was vast and unpredictable, but for the first time in cycles, the future seemed not only possible but promising. The journey from Talves to the hidden systems where remnants of the Velarri loyalists had gathered was long, but Kale, Leora, and Selene moved with confidence. The twins' abilities had grown stronger with every challenge, their instincts sharper, their understanding deeper. Leora's awareness of structure and motion allowed her to anticipate potential hazards in unknown environments, while Selene's subtle influence over energy flows gave them stability and safety. Kale marveled at their growth, realizing that these children were no longer merely survivors. They were capable, intelligent, and courageous in ways that exceeded expectation. The stars stretched endlessly before them, yet Kale felt a new sense of direction. They were following faint signals, encrypted pulses that hinted at the presence of the Empress herself. Though the signals were weak, they carried purpose, intelligence, and intention. Kale explained to the twins that these signals were like breadcrumbs in the dark, guiding them toward something precious and important. Leora's eyes sparkled at the thought of following a trail, while Selene's quiet focus sharpened as she analyzed each pulse, discerning patterns and estimating distances with surprising accuracy. During their journey, Kale taught the twins how to navigate not only through space, but through interactions with other beings. They encountered minor settlements and small groups of travelers, each with different motives, skills, and levels of trustworthiness. Kale emphasized observation, patience, and subtle communication. Leora quickly learned to interpret body language, tone, and intention, while Selene absorbed the subtle flows of energy and movement, noticing when situations were calm or when they required caution. The twins were learning diplomacy and strategy without words, understanding that intelligence often lay in observation and judgment rather than action alone. As they approached a system marked by dense asteroid fields, Kale noted the need for careful navigation. These fields, though dangerous, provided natural cover from potential observers and scanners. The twins helped him calculate safe paths, predicting the movement of asteroids and using their abilities to sense energy patterns that could affect their trajectory. Kale smiled as he realized that their training, patience, and ingenuity had prepared them for this moment. They were no longer passengers, they were partners. Within the asteroid system, Kale detected a small fleet moving carefully through the shadows of rocks and debris. He recognized them from earlier signals, loyal Velarri vessels, cautious and alert, scanning for signs of the Empress's children. Kale explained to the twins the importance of maintaining composure and appearing neutral. Leora moved with quiet confidence, observing patterns and calculating movements, while Selene subtly stabilized minor energy readings, ensuring that their approach remained undetected. Together, they threaded through the asteroids like seasoned navigators. The reunion, when it came, was quiet and profound. From the shadows of the asteroid field, a single Velari vessel emerged, piloted by beings who had once served the Empress faithfully. Their sensors picked up the twins' presence, and signals confirmed the location of the Empress herself. Kale guided the twins carefully, ensuring that every action was measured, controlled, and deliberate. The twins' trust in him was complete, and their coordination flawless. Leora and Selene understood instinctively that the moment required patience, focus, and subtlety rather than haste. Finally, the vessel's communication channels opened, and Kale heard the Empress's voice for the first time since he had discovered the twins. Her tone carried a mixture of hope, caution, and restrained emotion. "Children, are you safe?" The twins, hearing her voice, felt a mix of recognition and wonder. Leora's eyes widened as she whispered their mother's name, while Selene's quiet focus softened into relief. Kale signaled for calm, allowing the twins to process the moment before responding. Through carefully guided communication, the Empress confirmed her identity, and Kale explained their journey, emphasizing the twins' safety and the development of their abilities. He described every detail of their progress, the lessons they had learned, and the subtle ways their skills had grown. The Empress listened intently, a mixture of relief and pride shining in her tone. She realized that these children, under Kale's guidance, had not only survived, they had thrived. The depth of their growth exceeded her expectations, reflecting both her legacy and Kale's ingenuity. The next step was delicate, the actual reunion. The twins had to approach the Empress with trust and confidence, guided by Kale's steady hand. Leora took the lead, her awareness guiding her steps, while Selene's energy stabilized their path. Kale followed closely, ensuring that every movement was safe, measured, and intentional. As they emerged from the shadows, the Empress's eyes widened, and the children ran forward without hesitation. Leora leapt into her mother's embrace, and Selene followed, her small hands clutching her mother's. For a long moment, there was only quiet, shared emotion, the relief of survival, the joy of reunion, and the understanding that the universe had aligned, however subtly, to bring them together. The Empress held her daughters tightly, her mind racing with gratitude and wonder. She realized that Kale, the human warrior, had accomplished what many in her empire would have thought impossible. He had protected the children, nurtured their growth, and guided them safely across a galaxy that had turned hostile. She saw in him the ingenuity, courage, and creativity that humans were known for, qualities that had ensured her daughters' survival and development. In that moment, the Empress understood that humans were not just observers in the galaxy, they were vital participants, capable of shaping the future in remarkable ways. Kale stepped back, allowing the Empress and her daughters to share the moment fully. He observed them with quiet pride, recognizing that his role had been not just to protect, but to empower. The twins had grown, their abilities evident in subtle ways, their awareness, their energy sensitivity, their problem-solving skills. Kale understood that they were no longer passive participants in the universe. They were emerging leaders, capable of influencing events, inspiring trust, and navigating challenges with intelligence and courage. The Empress spoke gently to Kale, her voice filled with respect and gratitude. "You have done more than protect my children. You have guided them, nurtured them, and helped them grow. Humans are remarkable. I underestimated them, and now I see the depth of their potential." Kale nodded humbly, aware that his actions had been driven not by recognition, but by responsibility, care, and the belief that cleverness and courage could shape outcomes in ways brute force could not. With the reunion complete, Kale, the Empress, and the twins began planning the next steps for the future of the Velari Empire. The Loyalist factions had begun consolidating, inspired by the knowledge that the Empress's heirs were alive, capable, and protected. Kale assisted with strategy, sharing insights about resource management, coordination, and diplomacy. The twins contributed as well, their abilities now fully integrated into practical applications. Leora's awareness helped detect opportunities for growth and stabilization, while Selene's energy sensitivity allowed subtle adjustments that enhanced efficiency and safety. Together, the group formed a remarkable team, humans and Velari working side by side toward a shared future. As they traveled to reunite with other loyalists, Kale observed the twins in action. Their confidence was evident in every gesture, every decision, and every interaction. Leora led exploration efforts, identifying paths and assessing environments, while Selene adjusted energy flows, stabilized equipment, and anticipated minor fluctuations. Kale realized that their growth was extraordinary, the result of guidance, opportunity, and innate ability. They had evolved from frightened children into competent, intelligent, and courageous individuals capable of shaping their destiny. The Empress, too, learned from the experience. She recognized that leadership required more than authority or power. It required understanding, creativity, and the ability to inspire trust. Observing the twins and Kale, she saw the potential for collaboration between humans and Veleri, a partnership that could strengthen both civilizations. The galaxy was unpredictable, but with careful planning, observation, and courage, remarkable outcomes were possible. Finally, the group arrived at a central gathering of loyalist Veleri. The Empress, holding her daughter's hands, addressed the assembly. She spoke not only of reunion but of the lessons learned, the importance of ingenuity, the value of courage combined with intelligence, and the unexpected ways in which humans could influence the galaxy. Leora and Selene stood confidently beside their mother, demonstrating through presence and calm assurance the skills and wisdom they had acquired under Kale's guidance. Kale watched silently, satisfied but humble. His journey had begun as a mission of protection, but it had evolved into something greater: the empowerment of two young leaders, the safe reunion of a family, and the demonstration that human ingenuity and courage could have a profound impact in a galaxy filled with uncertainty. He felt a quiet pride, not in recognition, but in the knowledge that he had contributed to something lasting, meaningful, and transformative. The twins, now fully aware of their potential, embraced their roles with curiosity, intelligence, and courage. Leora's decisiveness and awareness guided the group in subtle ways, while Selene's energy, sensitivity, and thoughtfulness provided balance and stability. Together, they embodied the promise of a future shaped not by fear or brute force, but by cleverness, observation, and courage. The Empress, seeing their growth, understood that the Veleri Empire had a renewed hope, one that blended tradition with innovation, heritage with ingenuity. In the quiet moments, Kale reflected on humanity's role in this story. Humans, often underestimated and overlooked, had demonstrated resilience, cleverness, and resourcefulness. Through careful observation, creativity, and courage, a single human had protected, guided, and empowered the heirs of an alien empire. The galaxy, vast and unpredictable, had been influenced not by brute strength alone, but by intelligence, empathy, and ingenuity. As the twin suns set over the gathering of loyalists, casting golden light over the assembly, Kale, the twins, and the Empress stood together. Hope, resilience, and determination radiated from the group, signaling a new beginning. The Veleri Empire, though challenged, had found renewal, and humanity had shown that it could be a force for ingenuity, collaboration, and courage in a universe full of possibilities. The stars stretched endlessly above them, glittering like scattered diamonds, and for the first time in cycles, Kale felt that the galaxy was not merely a place of challenges, but a canvas for creativity, courage, and hope. The twins, safe and empowered, were living proof that even in the most difficult circumstances, resilience, cleverness, and compassion could shape a brighter future. The Empress, reunited with her daughters, understood that the universe had changed, not because of power or fear, but because of ingenuity, collaboration, and courage across species. In that moment, the human warrior, the twins, and the Empress stood together, a quiet but undeniable testament to the potential of humanity, the resilience of life, and the power of cleverness and courage to shape the course of history. The journey had been long, filled with challenges and learning, but it had led to triumph. The galaxy, vast and full of mysteries, would never be the same, and the spark of hope had been carried forward, brilliant, enduring, and unstoppable.